on, Mike.
The cloud. Big problems with going to your computer. I learned the last time. Anyways, welcome everybody. Thank you for so much for joining us tonight. We're so happy to have Andy Neja from Cairn. Just a short story how I came across the wine or the winemaker was in 2021, in November of 21. Raj Karnik and his friend Maher and I were, and our wives were at Le Petit Canet, and we'd had a bottle of wine we shouldn't have been drinking at all. We'd already had plenty. And we asked Alex, I believe is his name, right? At Le, what do you have? And he goes, I got this bottle, and I'm not advertising for of the Caliza 2019 Syrah Reserve Syrah, if I say it right.
The
And
one that scored a
98 from Jeb Dunnick. And so we were all standing there, and even though we'd had a lot already, we go, wow, this is really good, you know. And so I ordered some right after that, and it come to find out that Andy, who was assistant winemaker at Caliza at the time, was the one who made that wine. So, and that in the 2019, 20, and 21 too. You did 21 too, right, Andy? So, anyways, I was so blown away by it. So when I found out Andy was going to had his own label, I we connected via the group, and I said, well, get me a few bottles, and I bought a few bottles, and he said, you know what? I'm going down to Ladera Ranch. He goes, I can drop them off for you. And so he came by the house, and he and Michelle and his very young son and his dog. We met them all here, and we had a little chat, and just the nicest people. Then I opened the bottle that night, and I told him, I said, well, how do I decant it? And he just said, plop it turn it upside down in your decanter and just let it plop out. And he goes, it should be good to go. And I loved it. And I took a picture of it and I shared it with everybody on Facebook. And that's kind of the start of our journey with Cairn. And now I believe Andy's, and he'll tell you more about it, but he's completely out on his own and has his own place. And you're no longer connected to Caliza, correct? And so we welcome him and we wish him all the luck. And now I'm going to turn everything over to Jason.
Thank you, Mike. Andy, thank you for joining us. Everybody who dialed in, thanks for joining us tonight as well. I'm excited about this one. A fan of Andy and his wines. Very delicious. Excited to talk about them tonight. Um, and Andy, I think this is an important call because your about section on your website is anemic. So we're going to fill in some dots here a little bit and tell a little bit more of your story, which is an important story. Um, but I look forward to it. Like Mike, the opportunity to come visit you right after I think you had just opened your doors. Um, and I remember it was a full day of tasting, and you squeezed us in. We appreciate that. And sometimes you can have some palate fatigue by that point of the day. But my wife and I loved every wine of yours that we tried, um, and every wine since then. And tonight, uh, I am really enjoying your Lopi Grenache, which, sorry, it's hard for my camera to pick it up. We'll talk a little bit about that later. It's a special wine. It's a good reason for people to become a member of your club quickly before it's all gone. But I digress. We'll get back to the wine in a minute. The format here, Andy, is we're going to talk to you about you for a little bit before we talk about wine. Let everybody know a little bit about you and your personal story. So, to that point, Let's start off by having you tell us a little bit about Andy before wine. Like, what did you do before wine, and were your interests, your passions growing up before you got this bug?
Yeah, well, thanks for that. Glad you're enjoying the Lopi. That's a pretty special wine that we made. Um, so my journey before wine. So I didn't grow up in a wine family. I grew up mostly in Orange County down there, City of Orange, Lake Forest, Ladera Ranch, San Clemente. Um, Spent some time out in Phoenix, Arizona, and then back to California. And again, didn't grow up in a wine family, and kind of discovered wine at a relatively young age, age of 20. Started dating my now wife, Michelle. She was a little older than me, so she could buy the beverages for us to enjoy. But didn't really know much about wine, and just kind of started drinking it and exploring it. And her parents very much liked wine and still do. And we just, something about this beverage just really caught my eye, and just I needed to know more about it. Like, why is this Grenache different than that Grenache? Like, why does this place not call this Grenache? Why do they call it where it's from? Why do they make it in this way? What's different about it? And so my journey in wine kind of began a little early. And at the same time, I started working at Trader Joe's while I was in college, and Trader Joe's sells wine, and part of their education for their staff is product knowledge. So they would do wine tastings, and that kind of just expanded.
Wait, hold on. That's the first I ever heard that Trader Joe's did wine tastings for their staff. Were you at the one in Templeton?
When we first moved up here, yeah, I did transfer up here and work at that store for just a brief period. It was really only enough. I needed to accumulate, I don't remember the number of hours, but enough hours to keep my insurance for the rest of the year before harvest started. And yeah, it really worked out. So I was in a more upper management position with Trader Joe's when we made the decision to get into production. And so at that time I stepped down from that. And when we transferred, or when we moved up here, I kept that job to
Well,
be
hold on. I
here.
want to keep talking about that because I'm fascinated by this. Which Trader Joe's did you start at? Where were you in Phoenix, Orange County?
So I started at the Crystal Cove location,
Oh,
Yeah.
basically like right after it opened.
got it.
At the time, my brother was working for Trader Joe's over in Laguna Hills, and he's like, "You got to work here. It's a perfect job for when you're in school, and you just bust your butt and work hard, and they'll work around your hours." And that's kind of where we started. And the Crystal Cove store again was just opening at that time, and so he's like, "Hey, go over there. I'll send word to a couple of the managers that he knew," and he's like, "You're kind of be a shoo-in." And yeah, so being there, I mean, product knowledge in general for that company is important, or was important. I'm not sure. I'm sure it still is. But yeah, wine is a big part of what they sell. And so having product knowledge for your staff on just, some of the wines was important, and just some basic wine education so you could help your customers that are coming through the door.
Right, right.
So,
I
and
didn't know they were doing that. I have not encountered anybody going to Trader Joe's pretty often. I haven't encountered anybody recently that's seemed, I haven't just encountered anybody in that area. It seems like a kind of help yourself thing. So I don't know if they're still doing that or not, but that's interesting to hear. I know they focus on the category quite a bit because they have a lot of their own private labels, right?
I have a lot of private labels, and through my journey with Trader Joe's, it's one thing I did for some of the Southern Orange County stores, and my store in general was, as my journey in wine increased, I kind of took over all of that in our area, and really built up at the Mission Viejo store specifically, and increased our sales like year over year by a couple percent, just by selling the right product, putting the right product in the right spot, but also educating the staff so that at any point, even people that don't really drink wine could at least make an educated can provide some educated assistance to somebody that's kind of just standing there looking around.
Sure.
Or at least they could at least show them to where the Sauvignon Blanc was from New Zealand, when they're like, "Hey, where's this at?" And they're like, "Okay,
Right.
let me kind of guide you to the right spot." So Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
and then, well, so when you're not at Trader Joe's at that time, what are you doing for fun? What was a non-wine, non-business passion of yours?
I lived at the beach,
Ah,
so surfed all the time. Um, Michelle and I, I mean, at that point too, we enjoyed food and beverage. So like, that's really what we did. And any vacations we took, any places we visited, was all geared around, okay, what wines are we going to have? What restaurants are we going to try? What kind of new experiences are we going to do? But as far as
beachcombers?
beachcombers,
Yeah. Was
I'm
that?
not,
Oh, you're
no,
not familiar with Beachcomber? The restaurant on the beach, right in Crystal Cove, right across from the Trader Joe's.
okay. Spent a lot
Yeah.
of time at that Mastro's Ocean Club because it was
Oh
right there.
yeah.
Most of the time was in the bar just because some of the staff from Trader Joe's, when that restaurant opened, went over there. So we'd always go over there after work and grab a drink or whatnot before going home. But yeah, so we
Well,
just kept, I mean, surfing was a passion, and then just discovering wine. I mean, everything we started to do started to just revolve around taking trips to Santa Barbara, taking trips to Paso, taking trips, you know, those were easy places to go on your weekend because they're super close, quick and easy to get up and out. Great places to visit in the off season because it was slower, and those were the times of the year that we would take advantage of, you know, going to those places.
so what? One last non-wine question. Your favorite adult beverage that isn't wine?
That would have to be bourbon and rye. So at that same time, through my journey at Trader Joe's, is also when I started to go through the court of sommeliers and start working in restaurants and start bartending. And that was kind of the same time that there was like this revival of, you know, craft cocktails. And what we see a lot more of regularly now at restaurants was not a thing back in the early, you know, to mid 2000s. So bourbon became kind of a passion of mine. Same with the Maros and Amaris. Just very, you know, delicious beverages to be enjoyed, and a lot of diversity there, and some similarities crossover with wine as well.
Yeah, and bourbon seems to be a popular answer. Not only a popular answer, but amongst a lot of this group, it seems to be the popular adult beverage. It's not wine or their backup. I know that's Mike's routine is after a few wines, it's over to the bourbon.
Yeah, just have a glass of bourbon to sober you up, you know, it's perfect.
Right.
Right.
So
There's a lot of similarities between the two, wine and bourbon,
Yeah.
in
yeah,
terms of nuances, you know.
yeah.
Okay, so you're running some of the wine program there at your Trader Joe's, and you're getting more interested in wine. What what point triggers you to think about moving into the industry?
So probably around 2010, 2011, just started to take a more of our wine, you know, vacation trips. We started to spend more time doing more in-depth experiences, or trying to get more involved on more of the agricultural side, so the vineyard side, and really trying to understand, really dive into more on understanding like why are wines different. And the biggest thing that makes them different is where they're from, and the terroir, and what they're growing in, and how they're growing them, and how you're training them. And kind of through that time, I was just, you know, we kind of joked about it. I was like, man, I'd really like to do this, but I don't really know how, because I lived in Southern Orange County. There's no wine region around us. Temecula is the closest. That was not an option at all. But as far as somewhere that people were actually making wine, like that was the closest area, but didn't really know how to go about doing it. I have a business finance degree and a minor in accounting, and like just don't, like nothing in my path like ever was like led to like producing wines. And so I was like, how do I do this? And also, how do I convince my wife to move out of the city or the more urban area to somewhere that's not, to allow me to pursue this if and when that was ever going to be an option.
What was the secret to that, Andy? What was your selling point to get her to go?
So we love Paso so much. This was the first area that I ever went to a wine region. I took her here on her 25th birthday. You know, we did some wine things. We ordered pizza and drank beer at the Paso Robles Inn, you know, just youngsters having a good time because there's no nightlife here in town. There's a little bit better nightlife now. It definitely wasn't 20 years ago. But we just loved it here so much. And I think, you know, her parents loved it here as well. And her parents moving up here a year before we got married. So we got married up here. They moved up here a year before that. And so it made it really easy to start coming up here even more frequently because number one, she could see her parents. And number two, we had a place to stay. And then getting married here, we just started to make a lot of connections with people in the area. And so when we'd come, there'd be so many trips that we'd come that sure, we'd go do a wine tasting one day, but we'd end up hanging out with our friends that worked at Denner or that worked at Cloto or that worked at Epic. And like, we'd end up spending time hanging out with people and not really, I mean, we'd be drinking wine and things of that nature because, well, we like to drink a lot. But we weren't just doing like wine specific, you know, adventuring, so to speak. We started making connections with people and wanted to more so just kind of come up, hang out and have a good time. And I think having those connections and having just that long standing, all that time coming to Paso kind of made it the transition a little bit easier. Through me trying to convince her to move, there were some tragedies that happened in our lives. Didn't affect us physically or anything, but had some close friends pass unexpectedly, and just it's kind of one of those things where I think she felt that she wanted to support me in my journey of like, hey, I really, really want to do this, and I think I can do it. But if we're gonna do it, we have to go full bore. So I should step back and say that before we made that decision, I was coming up here and working every weekend for free for Carl over at Caliza. He was down one night at our restaurant, and I was just kind of jokingly asked him like, hey, can I come and help at the winery this weekend? My weekends back then were during the week, and he agreed. And so I came up. I must have done a good job the first weekend because I said, hey, I'm going to be back here next weekend. Can I come back? And he agreed, and pretty much did that every weekend for almost a year, up until that point that in that same time frame that we talked about friends passing and whatnot, that we made the decision that we were going to move here. And that's when I asked Carl, I said, hey, I'm going to move here, so I'm going to have to start getting paid for my work if I'm going to come in. So I'm going to need a job, and I need somebody to teach me how to do some of these things, and I'd like to learn, and I think I can do this. And yeah, so I'm pretty much just a self-taught winemaker, learned what I've learned on the job and just working with others, and, you know, obviously reading books, always educating myself constantly because this world is just immense and it's ever changing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So as you're starting to make this transition then in the industry, was there a particular wine that you remember drinking that made a lasting impression that made you think differently about wine?
I can't ever pinpoint one specific wine. There's been a lot of wines that I've tasted and tried over a lot of the years that even might not have been like the most favorite of wines I've ever had, but was just the interesting thing about the wine and where the wine came from and why are they growing this fruit here. So there's some wines that I've had from the Canary Islands that are,
Wow.
you know, made from Mencia, and they're growing these vines like on the sides of cliffs and in these rocky terrains, like nowhere that you would imagine that you would even think of stepping foot to walk, are they're growing this fruit, and it's really incredible. And you know, some things like that just make I'm just wowed by that. Like, that's just so cool. And they're not concerned with the economics of like, this doesn't make sense to farm, or this costs us a lot, or we're doing, no, this is just what we're going to do. This is where we live, and this is what we're going to grow, and this is what we're going to make. And I love that about wine, and growers that are taking chances and planting varieties here and doing things that others aren't doing are things that we're looking to be a part of, because that's kind of all part of our journey. And the wines that I've had and the wines that we're looking to craft, we want to have wines that are unique. You know, we don't craft any two wines that are the same. Even if there's two Grenaches, they're completely different wines. And
There really shouldn't be any such thing as two wines that are the same from vintage to vintage, right?
I don't
And if
think
there is,
there's a lot of
shouldn't you scratch
producers
your head
that,
about it?
yeah, there's a lot of producers that make, you know, certain Bordeaux blends or certain Rhone blends, and like there's a lot of similarities in the wines. You know, it's like, okay, this one has 20% more Syrah, this one has 20% more Grenache, but there's a lot of similarities through the wine itself, and we don't want that. Like, we want the wines to be unique and different.
So are you saying, Andy, vintage to vintage, if you do a blend one vintage, you don't want that same blend next vintage, even if it tastes different? Is that where you're going with that?
No, just more so with like within the same vintage. Like, we don't want any two wines to be or
Got
taste
it.
the
Okay.
same. And we're definitely, I mean, we're a tiny boutique producer, but we have no formulas in what we're trying to do. And we just try and let the vintage speak, and don't manipulate our wines in any ways. So we're very transparent in like how we're doing it and what we're trying to make.
Well, so let's go back to you got your start there at Caliza. Bridge the gap for us from and actually tell us about your time there at Caliza as you transition to a more significant role, um, and then we'll move over to your current label.
Yeah, so just officially started there in 2015. That was my first harvest. Was just a harvest intern, just essentially just figuring it all out. Like, how does this work? How does a pump work? How does the stemmer work? Like, never operated any of these things. I'm pretty handy with that. And
This is 2015.
2015.
And so in that short a period of time from 2015, and sorry, I'm jumping a bit ahead here, to it was 2019 that you scored your 98 points.
Well, the 2019 vintage, yes.
2019 vintage, yeah. Well, I mean that's a pretty quick learning curve, let's say.
It's a team effort. The team there on the farming side is great, and we're looking into like how. I mean, that's where it starts. It starts in the vineyard. Like, you can't make these kind of wines without getting the fruit right, and if you don't get the fruit right, you're not going to get the wines right. It's just not possible. So, starting there and having a great team, farming it in a very beautiful vintage overall, made it a little bit easier for us at the winery to turn this beautiful fruit into really amazing wines. And kind of through that same time, we started to make some changes in the winemaking practices and things to better the wines. And for lack of a better sense, we kind of nailed it with that wine. To us that Syrah, and it's the epitome of what Syrah should taste like from the Willow Creek in Paso. Like, that speaks so specific to that terroir and that place that, if you have other 100% Syrahs in the same vintage from even nearby vineyards, I mean, there should be some similarities in those wines, and they're beautiful and they're gorgeous. So,
you sounds like you learned a lot at Caliza. Are there any particular learnings that you carried with you that are particular that are important still to you today as you're doing your own label?
most of it's just the meticulousness in the farming. Again, we don't have any vineyards at Cairn yet. We'd love to have some of our own estates eventually. So we work really closely with our growers, and lucky for me, having the ag and the farming background from where I started, they're really open to our interpretation of what we want done in the vineyard. And so being able to work with them to achieve our goals on our side is really nice. And a lot of folks don't necessarily do that with the growers that they're working with.
Well, I think it's probably with the number of labels out of Paso, probably more common than not that people are acquiring fruit versus growing their own fruit, right? Fewer estates than not. Um, and when you recognize, especially through your experience, of how important that process is, how are you evaluating uh, how that fruit is being grown before you're making commitments to where you're getting the fruit from?
We got a little sneak peek of some. Say hi, Keys.
Hi guys, have
Hi
fun.
there.
Hi, Michelle.
Hello. All right, we'll see you at home.
Okay.
Okay. Have fun, guys.
Well, it starts first off with, I mean, a conversation if it's somewhere that we're totally unfamiliar with. We source a lot of our fruit from vineyards that are attached to wineries already. So we kind of have an idea of their practices and their philosophies to begin with. But we have to source fruit from vineyards that are farming organically and sustainably, first and foremost. And then they have to be farming for quality, because we're not looking to just craft wine for the sake of crafting wine. We are looking to craft the best wines possible. We'd really like to kind of showcase our growers and showcase the areas where that fruit's coming from. If we can, again, we want to craft the best wines. So sometimes we have to blend them with fruit from other areas. That's just what we will need to do. But we've been able to kind of do that over these first few years with Cairjn and really showcase, I mean, hence the low pie that you're drinking tonight. We want to showcase the growers. We want you as consumers to maybe start learning some stories about our growers, and especially the folks that are only growers. You as consumers have no way to meet these people or understand the significance that they provide to brands like ours. And working together, it's really important that we have a good relationship with these growers and what they're doing, and being able to both achieve our goals. Number one, the grower needs to make some money and make sure they're profitable to live for them. And we need to make sure that we're getting fruit at the right price point so that we can make some stellar wines without having to charge $150 a bottle. That's where prices in Paso are going for fruit, unfortunately. And they have to be incredible wines. So it's our job really as winemakers to not screw up the process at the winery once we get this beautiful fruit.
So when you get this fruit, tell us about your process for blending when you're getting fruit from different growers.
So far in our journey at Cairjn, we haven't had to do a lot of blending of different varieties. So really on bottle, we only have one blend that wasn't a finished wine to begin with, and that's what was our blend number one. That's our Caps Raw blend that we're sold out of, but then
Which is amazing, by the way. Just want to say.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
that
Yeah.
one.
So, and then our blend number two, which might even be better than blend number one, would be two varieties from different vineyards, Jada for the Cabernet and Caliza for the Syrah. Otherwise, we've been able to kind of keep a lot of things either by itself, or what we've done is at harvest, we're harvesting the fruit at the same time. So we just co-fermented them, put all the grapes into one tank, and called it essentially, not intentionally at harvest, but it ended up being a finished wine at harvest. So like in 2021, our 100% Grenache was a co-fermentation of 3 clones from 3 different blocks from 2 different vineyards, that we didn't think was going to stay by itself. In the end, we thought we were going to blend it with some of the low pie Grenache, and was just stellar on its own, and we loved what it was showing. And it's the same with the Lopi. We didn't buy that with the intention of keeping it by itself, but its uniqueness, and it's just a gorgeous wine that we kept it by itself. And so for like those two wines, they're both 100% Grenaches, but completely different. So as we grow, we'll kind of see how that kind of plays into a factor. But coming from a background of blending wines a lot, we're going to make the best wine. So if we end up having like a GSM or something like that, we'll just kind of see what's showing best from where we're getting it from and put those components together.
Yeah. Your first vintage at Cairn was which, 19?
2020. It was a
2020.
wonderful year to start a business.
Yeah, that was a tough vintage.
Yeah, made the
But you pulled
decision
it
to
off,
start
man.
in 2019 after harvest that year. Was like, okay, it's time. We need to do this. That's what we came here for. And so we put everything in motion, not knowing that, you know, the world was going to be a much different place by the time harvest rolled around. But I think it really worked out for us. The 2020 vintage has really shown really well out of the get-go, and we only have a few cases left of our 2020 Grenache from that vintage. Everything else is sold out.
We have not talked about your name, and you have one of those names that's worth talking about. Can you tell everybody about what the name means and why you picked it?
So Cairn's derived from the word cairn.
Can I interrupt a second? I'm going to show a little bit, but talk about the label along with that, so people can understand
Oh, there we go.
what all this is, and I'll share a little bit of a video while you're telling the story, Andy. Okay?
Yeah, sure. So Cairn's derived from the word cairn, and a cairn's a monument or memorial built out of a heap of rocks, which, like they just showed, is kind of what our label comes together and forms. So it's a wraparound label. So our label is all one label, and the idea behind that is that the label is supposed to be balanced, just like it takes a lot of balance to stack these rocks, and just like our wines will be balanced. So all those things are really important for us. But in Paso, we wanted to have a brand name that circled everything back to the vineyard. I can't keep talking about that enough, because that's truly where our wines are made. And when we're farming, especially on the west side, as especially where I was at Caliza, we're constantly digging up rocks and planting and building a cairn without even realizing you're doing it, because it's just part of the farming. You're constantly digging up rocks. I mean, the vineyards produce more rocks than they do grapes. So you're constantly stacking them up and stacking them up. And we added the J into the name, and it's a play on my middle name, which is James. And it's part of our last name, which is Neja, which is also kind of a silent J. And so we thought it would be fun and a neat way to have our own word. And so because it's our word, it means the same as Cairn, but we pronounce it Cairn because it's ours, and this is America, and that's how we can do it.
Andy, doesn't each one of your varietals have a different label? Am I wrong?
So each label on the bottle is the same label as it wraps around, but each wine has its own symbol. I'm not sure if you guys can see all these. I'm drinking our 2021 Grenache tonight because I just love this wine. It is so freaking beautiful right now that I love it. So, but yeah, you can kind of see behind me on the wall, there's a lot of all of our different symbols for all of our different wines. And so we don't use any capsules or wax on our bottles. Those are just a complete waste, in my opinion. They don't do anything for the wine. We only use a nice lightweight bottle. It lowers our carbon footprint as a winery. It's cheaper to get. It's cheaper to ship for our customers and for our members. It also fits into your wine cellar more efficiently. So it's efficient in every manner. Those were kind of things that were important to us. Having the big heavy bottle is just purely aesthetic and just not something I'm into. And it's, to me, kind of wasteful. So that's why we kind of developed these symbols, because our bottles lay in your cellar naked. And so you can see the cork. And so we wanted to be a little bit different than what everyone else was doing, because we like to do that here. And we gave each one its own story and its own identity. And so when you visit us, we can definitely go more in depth with each wine, what that is and why we selected those symbols. But yeah, they all have, you know, some deep meaning. And what's fun is for members and fans that once you kind of learn the story of these symbols, and we're actually going to be building out some more ways to communicate that with our folks. Then you can open your cellar, you can look in there, you can see, you know, that rose petal sitting there looking at you and be like, oh, I was looking for Grenache tonight. I'm going to have that. And so you can then snag that bottle. So just something that kind of builds into the wines, and it builds into this, you know, our story and kind of, you know, what we're doing here with this project.
So, as it relates to this project and your approach to wine, do you have a particular strategy on how you craft your wines? Is there anything that guides you from vintage to vintage on what your approach will be?
So we kind of take everything as it comes. So since we started Cairn, we've had this huge roller coaster of vintages. 2020 was hot.
Right.
21 cooled back down. 2022 was ridiculously hot. 2023 was darn near coldest on record. Probably second only to the 2011 vintage, which I wasn't here for, but I've enjoyed a lot of wines from. So it's been great, because that's one cool thing about wine is like, you got to always learn, you got to always adapt, you got to always just kind of understand what you're going with, what you got. And that's what also makes it unique and different. So each vintage is going to really scream what happened that year. I mean, wine tells a story, and it's super cool. I mean, it's telling you that story of that whole season, and then, you know, it's the story of how we ended up producing it. So we just kind of take it as it comes. And, you know, for varieties like Grenache, we like to use a little bit of whole cluster. For varieties like Mourvedre, we like to use a lot of whole cluster. For varieties like Syrah, where we're getting Syrah from, we don't like any whole cluster. We'd like to let the fruit shine. You know, for Syrah and Cabernet, they see a whole lot of new French oak. For almost all of our other varieties, they see no new oak, and mostly all neutral. And as we grow now, we're going to be adding some amphora in for Vermentino, which we're making now.
Nice.
We are also going to be doing some Esertico this year, which, for those that don't know, it's a variety native to like the Santorini area of Greece. That a grower has taken the chance to plant out here, right on the east side in the Geneseo district, right up behind Steinbeck, at a vineyard called Duas Terrace, planted and grown right now by a fourth generation grape grower. His name's Richard Lockland. Great individual, and just really has the potential to make some pretty stellar wines with some of these varieties that you may have heard of or you may not have, but we feel will do really stellar where we're at. So,
And have you seen any region anywhere in the world that can grow as many unique varietals as Paso? Grow them well?
I don't think so, but we're pretty unique here in Paso. We have so many microclimates, and the diversity of the area it's pretty vast. Especially after living here for now, you know, quite a while. I mean, we're over on the east side, so our facility is right off 46 East in Golden Hill. If you guys know where the Ford dealership is on 46 when you're coming in, that's right where we're across from. We live right on the east side, just a mile over the hill from where we're at. And but we used to work over on the west side a lot, and so I could be at home in, you know, just a t-shirt, but I'd have to take a jacket and put it on by the time that I would get to the vineyard, which is only like 7 miles away. But just so drastically different. And in all of these areas, it's just so different. I mean, we sit in such a perfect location right in the Templeton Gap, which allows us to get warm days, but cool nights. I think just as we grow as a region, the chances that growers take with planting different varieties that, you know, should do well here, I think that number of, varietals grown will even grow. Like,
That's amazing.
there's a lot of varieties that probably aren't being planted that could do well here. And I was just talking with someone, Jeff from Vinyl Vineyards, who their spot's right down the street from us. They're replanting a good portion of their vineyard, and same thing. Like, he's like, I'd like to plant some different things here that should do well here, because there's a lot of area in Paso that's planted to the wrong varieties that you can make wine from, and sure, it makes decent wine, but it doesn't make great wine. So we want to make great wines and really focus on having a diversity, even within our portfolio, of different varieties and things that you may not have heard of, but when you come in and you try them, you might be wowed and be like, wow, I never knew. And why would you? Because where would you have had an Asortico unless you're sitting on the hilltop in Santorini? I mean, there's not many examples of it.
I mean, but there's quality Spanish varietals, Italian varietals, obviously Bordeaux and Rhone. It's just amazing the diversity of varietals coming out of Paso now.
Yeah, I mean, we sit in, who said it? Who said it to me? I think it was Ishka Stanislaus over at Guayamar. He's like, the Paso is a Mediterranean climate on steroids. Like, we have everything they have without sitting right on the water. But we have beautiful soils to be able to craft a really amazing wines. We have the temperature swings, so we can grow a diversity of varieties and be able to get them ripe and beautiful, but still have all of that wonderful acid there. I mean, the sky's the limit for what we can do. I know some guys like Alex at Albert, I don't know if anybody's tried his wines yet, fantastic wines. He's doing some incredible things with Sangiovese, and it's like, who would have? I mean, there's some other producers doing that, but his was incredible. So
Yeah,
I love that, because the Rhones are, the Rhones and Cabernet, those are going to be king here where we're at, and those do so well. But there's so much area that we can really dive out from that and make really world-class wines from other varieties as well.
yeah. Well, let's talk about your world-class wine. So, as mentioned, I'm enjoying this very special, unique Grenache. Why don't we start with that? Can you tell us the story of this Lopi Grenache?
Yeah, so Lopi, Brian Lopez purchased that property, I believe, at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. And kind of right at that same time, he's friends with a close friend of mine, Chef Mark Leduc, who's the chef at El Pasta Bar. And Mark was like, hey, you gotta go talk to my buddy Brian if you're starting your wine brand. He's just bought a vineyard in a great location. And he set that up. We met, and Brian was like, well, it's all contracted to Booker right now. So when fruit becomes available, I'll let you know, and we'll see, we'll kind of take it from there. And so in 2021, that opportunity became available for a little bit of Grenache. And that Grenache block sits, so if you don't know where Lopi is, which there's not much reason you would, it's right on Vineyard Drive, right as you pass Suter's driveway that goes up to the barn up top. And right before you get to Denner, there's a big vineyard on the right side with a gravel driveway that leads up to a big house on the hill. And the Grenache sits right down by the road. And if you've ever been on Vineyard Drive in the spring or the fall, you'd realize how actually cold it is down by that road. It's a very cool area, even though it's in a very warm overall AVA. So this fruit was just amazing. It took forever to ripen because of the cold. By the time we picked it, I don't think there was a leaf left on the vine. Just was kind of hanging there. It was the last thing to come in that vintage, and it was just perfect. Like, everything about it. The fruit was gorgeous when it came in. The ripeness was gorgeous. It was probably 24 and a half bricks, which might not mean much to most, but that's right in the range of where we'd kind of want those wines to be. The acid's just gorgeous. So we decided to do about 30% whole cluster with it. and just kind of play, hopefully, with what we felt like would be some cool climate kind of characteristics in the wine. And I feel like that really shows. You know, a lot of wonderful herbaceousness here, but the fruit is still just popping on it. And I think just the uniqueness of that combo of like having that kind of cooler climate herbaceousness with that beautiful, brighter red fruit character just made for a very interesting and unique wine. And
It is a very elegant and expressive
Yeah.
So
So, so I asked Andy, my common sense says this is young, you know, you bottled not too long ago. I'm going, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going 15% alcohol, and then I'm looking at the color and the clarity, and I'm going, this doesn't come off like a big Grenache, you know, a big red flavor bomb. It is very nice, very elegant, and actually has some of the characteristics, much lower alcohol wine that we've had, right? So it's amazing.
I
How
subscribe to
much do you
this.
have left?
Right? How much do you have left? I don't know if anybody's heard this expression that Grenache is what Pinot wants to be when it grows up, but I think this is a good example of that.
Right.
That's,
Absolutely.
you know, it's on the lighter body side, but man, it does not sacrifice anything
No, the
in
flavor
flavor and
is incredible.
expression.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's spectacular.
yeah, I mean, tannins integrated really nicely, and just you know, is raised in all used barrels, a couple twice used barrels. So it's just the nuances of having just a little bit of oak compartment into the wine, but we didn't want much at all. We really wanted to let that fruit character kind of shine through. And the softness here was kind of more surprising to me in the end, because I felt like we were going to have a little bit more of a tannic Grenache when we started, but we ferment our Grenache fairly low and slow. So everything we do for red wines is fermented in stainless tanks. We don't do any 48S bins or anything like that. So we full temperature control each one. Don't do a lot of cold soaking. This is probably cold soaked for maybe 2 days, maybe 3 at best. But when we ferment Grenache, there's a couple of yeasts that we like to use, and we just like to take it kind of low and slow. We don't really beat it up much through fermentation. So occasional pump overs, probably just punch it down a little bit, even though it's in tank, but we just want to pump it over enough to incorporate enough oxygen back into the wine to just, again, soften some of those tannins and just create some nuance there. And
Well, mission accomplished.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
I know we're getting tight on time. I just got a couple more quick questions though. First, I want to give you a chance to just walk through the rest of your current lineup. I know we talked a little bit about this Grenache, which is spectacular, but the rest of your lineup's really good too. So I want to have you talk us through what you got going on right now. What else is available?
So we just released that low pie we just talked about. We also released the 2021 Grenache that I'm drinking, which is a co-fermentation of 3 different clones of Grenache, which was kind of cool. We didn't set out to do that. So we were supposed to just get a little bit of Grenache from a single block at the Jada Vineyard. But in these first couple of years, it was really hard to kind of get a full allocation of fruit from everywhere. And so as we got to harvest, the grower was like, hey, we can't really get you what you need, but we have a little bit of this fruit from this block. Would you like that? And I was like, well, I guess I can't really, beggars can't be choosers as a young startup brand. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to go with that. And at the same time, the same day, or same night, I should say, we were harvesting the Grenache block at Caliza. And so all the fruit came into the winery that morning, my fruit from Jada and then the fruit from Caliza. And it just so happened that we had enough fruit at Caliza that we couldn't fit the entire amount into one tank or one vessel. And at the time, the cellar was pretty full, and we didn't really want to add another vessel or another tank in order to split the lot up. And so Carl was like, hey, do you want to just buy that little bit extra? And I was like, hell yeah, I do. So took that little bit of extra and we just threw them all together in one tank, did about 25% whole cluster. And the uniqueness in this wine was just so amazing on its own that we kept it by itself, which is why we have 2 Grenaches right now. So, and then the other wine that we currently have in our lineup is our 100% Syrah from Caliza. So a vineyard I'm pretty familiar with working with. Syrah I'm pretty familiar with working with, as we kind of already touched on. It was a no-brainer to me to really want to buy some Syrah from where I was working and where we were already making wines. And there was nothing I ever wanted to do with it more than to have one that is just Syrah from Caliza. In my opinion, and I can argue in depth about how great this vineyard is, and it's better than any site in Paso for Syrah. I don't care who else it is. It's so unique and it's just so different. And it's just amazing that this site for Syrah is it's impressive. So, and there's a lot of other winemakers that'll attest to that buy fruit from there. Don Burns at Turtle Rock, Jacob Toft, just to name a few that they'll say the same thing. It's the best Syrah in the cellar every year. So our 100% Syrah is a co-fermentation of 3 clones of Syrah. So 6 different clones grown on the property. We do a co-fermentation of 3 blocks in 1 tank. So if you're not familiar with Caliza, it's 3 essentially big rolling hillsides. And so when we harvest our fruit or our portion of it, we are taking fruit from kind of the same latitude as you go up and down those hills, kind of across the whole vineyard for that co-fermentation lot. And then we do a single block, single lot of the Alban Clone 1, mainly because I like using that Syrah to blend with Cabernet Sauvignon for our, what we call blend number, whichever's in this line. In this case, number 2 will come out in the fall. So then currently in our lineup, we still have a little bit of rosé. And then we still have a few cases of our 2020 Grenache, and that's kind of everything we have at the moment. We have Albarino and Vermentino that will probably get bottled late spring. We're not big to rush our whites into bottle. We like to let them develop a little bit and get some more character. And then, yeah, in the fall, we'll have our blend number 2, which is our Cab Syrah blend. For club members, we'll have our Cabernet Sauvignon, which is a pretty special wine. We didn't set out to make a straight cab. We bought Cabernet to make our blend. But in the first vintage, it was so amazing. And every time I took it home, Michelle was like, you have to keep this by itself. Like, you can't, you have to, like, it's just so amazing. And so we put the blend number 1 together and we were able to keep a couple barrels by itself. And that's kind of how that wine was born. And so we made that same wine again in 2021.
Thanks, Michelle.
In 2022, after 21, so we lost the Jada Vineyard after 21 because they sold to Riboli family, and Riboli doesn't sell fruit. So we've been trying to kind of replace that Cabernet source, but we were able to get a little Lopi in 2022, not too much. So we probably will only be able to put our blend together. Maybe we'll have some Cabernet. But in 2023, we finally resecured some amazing Cabernet vineyards. One called Bella, which is the little vineyard right behind Paso Terrace tasting room, if you've ever been up there. We get some Cabernet also from Calista over in Templeton Gap. And that fruit is incredible.
Yeah.
Another winery, if you guys haven't heard of or tried Calista and what Brian's doing over there, great things, beautiful site. Yeah, and so I think that's kind of all we have. We have Graciano, Mourvèdre, Carignan, some wines of those varieties in the works in barrels, but we don't have any finished blends yet for those. But if you want to go on a journey of Grenache, if Grenache is your cup of tea, right now is a great time to come and taste, because we're going to take you through a whole lot of Grenaches, all the way from rosé to a couple reds. and then finish you off with some pretty stellar Syrah from 2021. So still pretty young, but tasting amazing already. So
So
Yeah.
just to
I-
put
I-
a plug for it, the Albariño is excellent. That's what we're drinking tonight, and we've been
Albarino,
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Really good.
really good.
that might be one of the
Agreed.
last bottles in existence. So
Oh,
No, don't say that.
So you fed me, and I got the last bottles too. That was a good weekend.
We met some really fun people that time, Andy. We had a great time. Thanks for
Hey,
having
Andy, I got one last question. 'Cause I know we're right at time. One last question, and I'll turn over to Mike, and we can open up for questions if you got any additional time. But popular question for the group, and it's been something that we look forward to in all of our calls. But I want to get a pro tip from you, maybe something that you see from your experience in wine that consumers can do different or better to improve their wine enjoyment. Maybe something about how or where they buy the wine, how they store it, how they consume it. Anything as
we
anything that you
began.
would share as a
Yeah.
pro tip.
well, pro tip, you're going to have a better experience if you're drinking Cairn wine.
That's a promotion tip, not a pro tip.
Yeah,
Wine is meant to bring people together. So to enjoy great wine, you'll have more enjoyment out of it with people than without. So that's my pro tip for the day. Bring people together. Doesn't matter what their political background is or any of that stuff. And that's kind of the idea behind some of our member barbecues. Like, wine's meant to bring people together. So we bring our members together. We sit them at communal tables, and we want to get to know other people. We want to get to know you, and we want to share that. And so as we grow, it's something we want to share. We not just our wines, but we'll start sharing other wines. And man, a great bottle of wine is way more enjoyable when you're with folks that appreciate it and maybe brought something that's special to them, and having the story to tell where you were, where you drank that, or where you discovered that wine for the first time is, I think, pretty cool and something worth noting.
Agreed. I love that pro tip.
Andy, you just described this group
Yeah. True.
exactly the way it is. It's about wine brings everybody together. That's what I've experienced over the last 3 years. So
I agree. Well said, Mike. Hey, I want to make a quick plug. You were mentioning Celesta and the beautiful property over there. We do have a party coming up for this group, April 27th, correct, Mike? Do I have that date right?
that is correct.
And it will be at Calista. It is a beautiful property. And then I don't know how many tickets we have left. If we do have a couple tickets left, Mike, can people still
I
get
have some left, yeah.
Okay. So, and how would they find those tickets?
I can send the link at Paso Robles winefanatics.com, and you have to go and look for the event, and you'll find the tickets there.
And hopefully we
We
can
have
see you.
five winemakers. Andy, next year, you're the man. We're gonna get you involved. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm down, and if you want me to smoke something, we can make it happen.
What
Yeah.
are you talking about?
He's talking about cooking. He's talking about cooking,
We
Mike.
can talk about
Hey.
a few things. Smoking one only makes the other better. So
What are you saying, man? Is
Andy,
that's the kind of party we're talking about, huh?
I did
Andy, I want to
45
thank
pounds
you
of
again.
brisket
I
for New Year's Eve,
really
so.
have enjoyed your wines. I appreciate you. You've always been a pleasure to talk to. I look forward to coming to visit you again soon. But really want to thank you again for your time. And everybody for dialing in and joining tonight. This will be posted and replayed back up on the group.
Yeah.
And then Mike, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, let's open it up for some questions, but I'm going to ask the first two because they got an expert on here. Two that have been bugging me for a while. Okay, so what is your definition of reserve?
Me?
Yeah, because I'm fascinated by it because I think it's abused to some degree, but maybe it's not. Reserve means better fruit, the better fruit from a block or the vineyard but you give us some definition of what you think that is.
I think that's tough, and I think everyone has a different definition of that. But for
Right.
me, and in my journey, it's just something about, it's not just the fruit, because the fruit's all the same, but like something about the wines that you made that it's just different. Like there's something about it that's different. And it's just that maybe there's more complexity to it. Maybe there's just, maybe it's just bigger, bolder. Maybe it's just got more going on. I would agree 100% that term is abused incredibly throughout the industry. But for me,
as a marketing technique but I just wonder if there's parameters around it that make it, but that means it means one thing to one winemaker or the winery or the marketing people, and it means something different to another operation, right?
100% correct. Yeah, and in the US, there's no rules behind what you can call something like that. In other countries, there's rules and regulations for what you can call certain things, but not here. So my hope would be is that wineries and winemakers are being honest with what they're doing, and they're labeling it that or calling it that because it's just something that's super special, and made just an incredible wine. And that's why they are kind of tiering it as an upper echelon wine in their portfolio.
So I have one more, and then I'm going to let other people talk. I always fascinated with drinkability. How do you get to, you're the first person I'm asking these questions for the first time. Drinkability, like you go, it's good till drinkable from now until 20 or a year from now till 2031, 2035. How does the industry or the winemakers arrive at that? Is it complex or?
Well, I think a lot of people arrive at that after crafting wines for a long time from specific places, but it's always a tough one to answer for me because wines are subjective to you as an individual. So like we might think the wine's great 10 years from now, but you might not, and vice versa. I might think the wine's great right now, and you're like, man, this isn't really hitting my palate yet. I want to kind of let it come together a little bit more. So we know, like with our red wines, that they have all of the things needed: tannin, alcohol, acid, all of the things that are necessary to age a wine for great lengths of time.
If you store them properly, right? So
well, always has to be stored properly. Wine's a perishable item, just like anything that's perishable. You got to take care of it in the right way. But it just depends. Like I can't speak enough to this 2021 Grenache that I'm drinking, that like everyone asks me in here because they're young wines, and I'm like, I like this wine right now. I want to drink it all right now, and it's just amazing, and I love it. Now, like our bigger wines, like our Syrahs and stuff, it's like those wines will still come together over several years. So what I always tell people is, well, just buy a few bottles and enjoy them over a period of time. You might discover that when you pop that wine back open, after a couple of years, that maybe it's gone a little bit too far past where you're enjoying it. So drink it and then drink the rest of what you have. So
right. It's a 3-bottle rule for me. Buy 3 bottles, one now, one 5 years, one 7 years, or whatever. And but this, you are right. This is drinking well now. So
they're amazing right now, and they're just
like I said, common sense would have told me don't open something like that right away, but you were right. So I tip my.
And for us too, and for me with Cairjn, is like in my brain, I needed our wines to be drinkable now. I don't have, we're brand new, so people discovering us for the first time, we don't have a track record or this long history of making great wines going back, 20 or more years. It's like we're brand new, and the wines they have to taste great now because we need to sell them, because it's a business and we need to be able to pay for the lights to be on, and for us to grow as a winery. So wineries are in the business of selling wine. That's what we do. That's what we're making. And I think it's pretty cool, the product that we're able to craft versus other industries.
Well, you're doing a great job. One last comment that friends here, Lara and Joe, great bottle shape, our favorite for fridges. Kudos.
Yeah.
Um,
That's by design. That was on purpose. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it just goes back to all of those efficiencies, and just the bottles shouldn't have to be some giant crazy monstrosities. Shouldn't have to consume a lot of glass to make. I mean, it's wasteful, and it's not necessary.
And it adds to the cost of the bottle. The bigger the bottle, right? So makes sense. Okay, I'm gonna open it up. Who's got questions for Andy? Jump in, unmute yourself, and jump in.
Okay, I got a question for you real quick here. So you're talking about the 21 Grenache, and that's what you guys were talking about, the 21, not the 20?
I'm drinking the 21
You're
Grenache.
drinking the 21.
The
Okay.
fellas were drinking the 21 Lopi
We're
Grenache,
drinking the low pie.
the
Yeah.
vineyard designated Grenache.
So the drinkability of it opens up. How much of that is really because 21 was a funky year, and that just the way the grapes came out and the way the baby came out, essentially? Is that a lot of that, or is that your style that you're trying to come up to when you're having it drinkable right now?
So in crafting those wines, I wanted them to be, and it's why we also didn't release them last fall, because we had talked about releasing them last fall. They just weren't ready yet. They were still super freshly bottled and needed more time. And the reason we released these Grenaches in this last month is because they're tasting amazing now. They've had some time to come together. The 21 vintage is, to me, for varieties like this, a softer vintage. There's a lot of power in the 21s as well for varieties like Syrah and Cabernet, but the Grenache wines are very pretty wines. So other producers that are making wines that are like this should be drinkable fairly young. And I like wines like this Grenache the way they are because of how vibrant and lively the wine is. I like that personally.
Thank you. Perfect.
So I bought the wrong ones because I bought the 20s. That's what we tasted tonight. I appreciate, except for the 21 rosé, which has been really lovely.
Cool.
And I'm really happy that you were on tonight and that I got introduced, because I've seen your label all over the Facebook group. People are drinking your bottles a lot, and I had not had the pleasure yet. And as I opened it just before coming on, I was wondering what's up with the stuff on the, because I opened the rosé, the other stuff we did our Corvin on, but I was wondering about the label. I was wondering about the art. I was wondering how to pronounce the name. So now I know. So thank you for all of that.
I know. I actually just sat with someone today earlier, and I was like, I think I need to put like the phonetic spelling of Cairn like up on the website. And our website, by the way, y'all, is super basic right now. This brand is just Michelle and I. We do have a partner family that's a part of our journey, but it's just Michelle and I and Keys. So after harvest last year, we just kind of roll. I left Caliza to be here full time. It was time to be here and go full bore with our brand and just focus here and not have, distractions elsewhere. And it's been amazing, and things have been busy, but it's allowed us to do a lot more things. And some things like websites and emails and things get put to the back burner because we're just trying to be busy growing the brand. And the beginning of the year has been very great to us. This group has been great to us. We love meeting you guys, and so many folks like Mike and Steve and where they're from, like that's where I grew up, like that's that's my hometown, my area. So it's cool.
So one follow-up question on that real quick is, I'm sorry, Joe, 1 second. How many cases are you doing right now?
So in 2021, so in the first year we did about 500, a little less than 500. And then in 21, we basically did about the same amount of red wine, but then we added in rosé and Albarino. So pushed us to about 650-ish, plus or minus, if I had to add it up. We grew a little bit in 2022, not a lot, but last year we made the investment to really start to grow. We, up until basically a year ago, we weren't selling wine. I mean, Mike got in on it. The Garagis festival of 2022 was essentially, I think it was 22, whatever it was. Yeah, 22 was the first. It was kind of our coming out. Like, we hadn't really announced who we were. We weren't really a presence. And a year ago we started moving into the location that we're in now, and so we started selling wine kind of into the winter, and then we started moving in here, and then the focus became on building this place out. Kind of lost my train of thought where I was going with all that, but like, we're really new. We're just kind of getting started and selling some wine through last year. We had some opportunities coming to harvest, like mentioning Caliza, of being able to get some fruit from some new vineyards, and we jumped on it. We didn't know how great the vintage was going to be when we made these decisions, and we're pretty excited that we did, because the 23 vintage is there's not a bad barrel in the house. So it's phenomenal.
Awesome.
I literally put my notebook down after tasting through about 13 or 14 barrels, and I was like, this is stupid. Like, I'm evaluating every barrel and everything. It's just amazing. Like, I just finished tasting through everything at that time, and I was like, I'll just come back to this later, because they're all just there was no like evaluating something for like, I don't know about this vineyard, don't know about this source, because we branched out to some new places, and man, we're excited for kind of what's to come for us. So, let alone what we already have right now. And if you got the 20s, yeah, there's not many of those left. So
The Syrah is really big. I think I'm glad we used the Corvin. I'm gonna put it down for a while. It'll be a couple years before we go back to it, I think. So it's good.
Perfect.
Thank you.
yeah.
Joe, did you have a question? Who has?
I had one comment and one question. So first comment is, don't lose a hair. Hold on to it as long as you can. I speak from experience. So number one. Number two.
It's all there. It's all there. Just
Oh my God.
Do you get to surf still? And where do you go?
Rockstar.
I don't surf that much right now, if ever, and it's really a bummer. I was just talking with a couple people about that the other day. When we started, well, step back even farther. Our son was born in 2019, and that really consumed a lot, just enjoying that whole process. And then after harvest of 2019, it was like, well, why don't we start a business? Why don't we start a winery? And so at the same time, I was still working full-time for another brand in town. So being there 40, 50 hours a week meant that I needed to spend all my time when I wasn't at work or on my weekends and things. Well, number one, spending time with my son, and then number two, working on this brand, which was a huge endeavor, much more so than you think, just to get all of these things kind of put together. Because just as meticulous as we are in crafting our wines, we're as meticulous with our branding and the story behind each one and what goes into them. So there's a lot, and even when you come and visit, we can touch on a lot of those things even more. All the look and feel of our small tasting room, and just all of the little nuances that go into our brand. It's really important, because all of those things have to exude what the time and effort and literal blood, sweat, and tears we've put into making these wines. So this year, and circling back to the surfing question, is I was talking with these guys, and I'm like, I might be able to get some free time to start hitting up the beach here soon. So we were talking about a couple of spots that they like to surf at, and I was like, okay, we're gonna have to hit some of those up here. First off, I'll have to get a full suit, wetsuit. I do not have one that fits anymore. And nor did I even really use one back when I surfed down south because it didn't really get as cold. The water up here is cold, so much different than San Clemente, San Onofre, and Churches, where I spent a lot of days in those waters.
Anybody
Perfect.
else,
Thank you.
anybody else have a question? Anybody? No? Well, Andy,
You know that Karen, you know Laura has to have another question.
I know, I
You
know.
she
Nobody
has
is
to add
gonna
this.
talk. I'm gonna talk. Anyway, I want to make sure it was clear. You talked about Vermentino and Albarino that are, not bottled yet. That's not a blend, right? You're doing those separately still?
Yes,
You are doing them
separately. Yeah, so we do Albarino. We get our Albarino from the Bovino Vineyard over in the El Pomar, which is just down the road from Calesta. Beautiful low-lying vineyard site. Makes a pretty stellar wine. Steve and Audrey can attest to that. They are drinking that tonight. And then our Vermentino comes from the new vineyard that's right down the road from us here off Union over by Steinbeck, which is called Duas Terras is the name of the vineyard. I am super stoked to be able to source fruit from this vineyard, and I have really high hopes for what it will bring for Vermentino, our Acertico. We get Cairjn from them as well, and it's possible that we'll get some Albarino from them. Rather than growing our Albarino program, we wanted to kind of add diversity into our white wines. So rather than making more Albarino, we wanted to branch out and have some Vermentino and have some, in this case, Acertico this year. So once we kind of get settled in with what those wines are and how they kind of fit into our portfolio, then we can kind of look at growing them. But we sell a good amount of whites, but more people are coming to us for red wines than whites, which may change, but so we didn't want to bite off too much before we really had the following there. And again, we've only been here for not even a year. March of last year, well, about this time, a couple weeks after this time last year, was when I started doing tastings essentially in the cellar, which was construction war zone, and folks that were lucky enough to taste back then just kind of walked in through our what is now tasting room and into the back of bar top, me sitting there with stools from my kitchen so that we could taste.
Well, I'm glad that you're not focusing on the whites. People aren't, because that way there's more for me. So that's good. But I love your reds too. That 3 Grenache blend is super, man. It's really great. Really enjoy your wines and the whole experience in your tasting room. And it's you guys are top class.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, so we want whites to be a big part of our program. Michelle and I drink a lot of whites at home. And we really want to craft wines that we like to drink. So that way, if you guys don't like them, we'll just drink them.
Okay, I got to follow up with that then. So what's your favorite white you're drinking at home right now?
Favorite white to drink at home right now? Well, I'm out of all of mine. So Ryan Peace over at Paso Robles makes some great whites locally. You can pick any of them. We really like his Peak Pool and his Vermentino. I know a lot of people are always go gangbusters over his Uni Blanc, but those are kind of wines that we liked to drink. Refreshing whites like that.
Okay.
Ryan has been a guest here. Those 2 wines are big hits for him. Yeah, huge.
We drove by the place, I think, 3 times last weekend and have not gotten there yet. Well, when I say weekend, we were there for 22 hours, I think.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll make it there in April, finally.
Yeah.
Oh, he makes some unique. He has some unique wines. He does. So
Yeah, and then our friends.
I'm not here to advocate for somebody else, Andy.
No.
I think that's it. I think that that's important. You know, like this is you know, I could recommend people to go to 50 good wineries in town that make great wines. It really depends on kind of what you're looking for. But another white that we've enjoyed lately, I should bring up, is the Chardonnay from Copia.
Yep. Amaret.
I like their wines a lot. Folks that kind of came into the industry at a similar time as myself. But that's a really nice Chardonnay.
They're friends of mine, and yeah, they're doing really well. Big friends of the group. So
If anybody's
Yeah,
here the next Friday afternoon, we'll be there supporting. So
where?
Copia,
Oh,
they're
Cool.
having a release party.
you're going to the release party, right? Yeah, gotcha.
I mean, we tasted the reds that we got from you, but we're drinking the rosé tonight, and we're really enjoying it. And my thing is that we've been learning more and more how versatile so many of the whites are to enjoy with food, and particularly if I'm trying to eat lighter. I'm not trying to eat a steak every night. I'm not trying to eat something heavy. If we're eating more fishes and more vegetables and things like that, that we're really trying to explore, you know, some lighter wines to pair with them, and figuring that out.
Whites is the best way to go. And so for us with whites, we make them in a lower alcohol style than most. So for our whites for Paso are around 12%, give or take. We like that freshness in the wines. We like that we can enjoy a glass or two, not feel all boozy, especially because we like to drink a lot of whites while we're cooking and prepping, and being able to enjoy a nice, beautiful beverage over the course of a couple hours or even an hour or two. And again, not get all drunk before you're at dinner is nice. So,
No, and actually,
I've never done that.
So you can drink 2 bottles without falling down.
Yeah. So, and our whites are great with food. They go great with a lot of cuisines that we eat regularly. And I say we as collectively as Californians, and the bounty that we have at our fingertips, right? We have everything in this state, everything. So our seafood selection is phenomenal. And we love that. So drinking our Albarino with crab legs, drinking our Albarino with scallop ceviche. You can even match it up with a Fijian dish called kukunda, which is basically Fijian ceviche, just done in a different way. But something we discovered when we honeymooned there 10 years ago. And yeah, we love that. And again, like you're saying, like we like eating some fresher foods, lighter foods regularly, because yeah, I can't delve into a steak, you know, that often. I'm getting older now too, so I'm not 20 where I can have whatever I want.
We resemble that remark, even though I don't have it up here. Again, I got the gray down here. It's funny you mentioned this. We did a Northern Rhone trip when we were in Lyon, and we went to Paul Bocuse and his main restaurant, which is one of the famous French restaurants in France. He's the French French restaurateur. And we had one of the more amazing meals we've ever had, but totally paired with white, absolutely paired with white wine across the board. And the one time Laura came up and said, "No, I want a Pinot Noir with this." And they went, "You're an idiot, but I'm going to pour this to you anyways." And they poured it.
They made sure they gave me a Pinot that didn't work.
But yeah, it was kind of amazing. It was we are constantly pairing wines with meals now, and we're finding that the whites are actually more pairable than the reds and more versatile. We're seeing it again and again. Even though only 25% of our cellar is white, it's because we drink it all the time. But
I have a good friend. He just horrified that I'll sit there and drink a great bottle of Syrah, no food.
Oh, yeah.
That is the that is the litmus test for me about a bottle of wine. Yeah, because there's a lot of bottles of wine that are meh, but if you can drink the wine and you love it, just sipping it, that is, I don't need to have food with the wine. I like and enjoy paired wine, but he is all about pairing. I'm not. I open the bottle because I want to drink that bottle of wine. That's what I like, and that's what I like about Andy's Syrah, because I'm a Syrah person. You know, when I taste something, I fall in love with it.
It's funny because we had a fascinating, we had a dinner. She turned a magical age a little bit ago, and we did a full-on pairing meal with it. And we got one of the highlights of it was a 2011 Torrin
Right.
from Scott, and we paired it up with the beef Wellington, a filet mignon beef Wellington, and it was actually kind of shocking. I was tasting it, the wine, and we sampled it beforehand, of course. It was right on. I mean, we still had to decant it for a couple of hours. It still can go for another 10 years. But when you have it before the meal, and then as you're actually having the beef Wellington, it literally changed the entire profile of the meal and the wine, and it became about 10 times more enjoyable for me, which is kind of interesting because I was like going, oh my gosh, we're cracking this thing open and it's not quite what I was thinking. And then as soon as we put it with the beef Wellington, that blend just blew our minds. So anyway, just it's a little different opinion on it, Mike.
No, I agree. It's just that I go tasting in Paso, I'm not eating food.
No, yeah, exactly.
I'm wowed by it. It's just enhanced with food. But there's sometimes on a Sunday afternoon, we're sitting here watching sports or whatever, open a bottle of wine, dinner's like 2 hours out, we're drinking it. Because why? Because I want to drink Andy's wine, or I want to drink some other wine. I want to drink that wine that I love. That's all I'm saying. If it doesn't work standalone, it doesn't mean it won't work with the food. There's some wines I've drank that, in particular, I'm just going to point out one, maybe Andy, the Cab House. What's the guy's name? That cab over there is not standalone drink. It's meant to have with food. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Hanson's Cab House.
Yeah.
I'm not that familiar with his wines, but I know what you're talking about.
His cab works great with food. But sitting, enjoying a bottle with friends, it's pretty bold, and it works great with a ribeye. That's all I can tell you. I learned, don't serve that wine as a sipping wine. Use that with our food. Something fatty, ribeye or a New York or something.
No, I appreciate
Just with the beef.
Huh? Yeah.
It's just with the beef.
So actually, I got a question for you, Andy, real quick here. So I'm sorry, we're taking you way after, and you probably want to go home to your family.
You need to leave, just tell us.
Yeah, we'll probably
we're just yabbering, man. This will go on for 3 hours because we have 3 bottles of wine behind us. So
they're all yours.
Yeah, they're all yours. Yeah, exactly. I'm actually really enjoying it. So one of the things that and this is just more of an input for you. My favorite neighbor did their cab. 21 cab in the box wines, and stuff like your rosé and things like that, just as an input, we really like that. Having 3 liters sitting on your countertop or in your fridge that you can just tap into at any time. I know it's a whole outside process, but this is kind of more of a little tick knock you put into your mental note, is the high-end wines inside, like your wines are inside of a box wine or something like that, really are very cool because we end up taking them camping we go camping with 50 people, and we buy 4 or 5 of those things, and they're super easy, and everybody's blown away. Oh, you got me box wine. They're thinking of like Summit or Gallo or some other crap like that. Shouldn't say that, but they are. But then we end up getting these other ones, and it comes up. So it's just something to think about. I know you're just.
Have you been sitting in on my sales meetings lately?
Oh, really?
Is this what I'm catching? Is that you're somehow you got a little you got a bug in my place?
Channeling it, Andy here.
It's in the works. I have full spreadsheets. I have full spreadsheets for that. It was something I was trying to push at the last place I was at, particularly for one of the brands and a couple of the wines.
I wish Carl would do it, man. I wish Carl would do that.
But it's in the works for Cairn. I don't have any more details than that at the moment, but it's not just a thought. It's things are in motion to hopefully figure that out.
It makes, we have a compound here. There's 8 of us on the property here. 8 of the house.
That's why we lost a box of wine.
That's why we lost a box of wine. That's why we go through a box of wine in like 4 days. It goes really quick. But it's really nice to have that. And just from our point of view, we're about the ecology. And this is, I like the fact that you're using lighter glass. You're not using the 14-pound bottles and everything else like that. I mean, screw tops would be cool too. And I know that there's the preconceived notion of having a cork is the high level, that screw tops make it easy. But the box stuff is just super easy for us. We would jump all over that very, very quickly.
Well, it's in the works. So something to look out for from us. And speaking to the brand that you mentioned, that was something that was pushed heavily because it's easy for them to accomplish those goals over at My Favorite Neighbor, being under the umbrella of Constellation now. So being able to adapt and do things differently, you have a lot of more flexibility,
right?
Try things out. And you also like putting wine in a bag that ends up in a box, but putting wine in a bag in order for us to make sure that the wine stays fresh, there's processes that have to happen when it's bagged, and those processes are not very easy for us to achieve as a small brand. They don't have bag fillers here on the West Coast. These companies are all based in the Midwest and Northeast. Actually, I had a talk with one of the CEOs of one of those companies back when I was doing all of these, because I was like, how am I going to fill these? Like, how do I make sure that they're okay? Because we can feel comfortable filling some bags. There's that bourbon Mike was drinking. We can feel comfortable filling some bags for like a short period.
Watered down.
But making sure that once that wine goes in the bag and it doesn't have a lot of oxygen pickup and things like that, there's some processes that I'm hoping that we can, as a small brand, work with some other people in town to achieve some of those goals to get that. But I think as
one of our friends, this person who introduced us to Paso originally, it's from St. Louis. He got, I think he got a 3-pack from Tables Creek of the rosé about a year ago. And one of the 3 went back. It was swollen and it was a mess. And so he took pictures, had a good conversation with them, they did it. But yeah, it's good for you to learn from those who've already had those, a problem here and there, and how much of a problem did they have, right? We haven't had any problems with the ones that we've gotten.
We've gone through 6 of those.
And we got a couple from Tablets too. Because we're looking for people like you who are making really good wines and putting them in the box, so that we can have that versatility. And I think that you're probably the perfect size to market it to those of us who do care about the environment, who do care about how much does it cost to ship, because it doesn't do us any good to have to pay for the shipping either, whether you give me free shipping or I'm paying for
We're,
it.
we're
or
always
whatever.
paying for it. We're always paying for
Yeah.
shipping, no matter which way it goes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
However
We
that
can't
goes.
afford as a small brand to eat that,
No.
the costs are, they're insane. And,
Yeah.
you know, we're not shipping enough wine to be able to, I mean, if you're really big, then you can eat into it. And, we just can't do that as a.
I mean, you're in total,
I have
you're in
a
the slope
question.
right here.
So Wine Direct is a consolidator, right? They are packed, they're a
Their fulfillment house.
fulfillment, right? So how come the rates go up so high when they're pushing so much volume is what I haven't understood. And I know some wineries are shipping out their porch, out of their winery direct, but that is consolidation. Seems like the rate should be more competitive, but
Yeah, well, the fulfillment houses take the benefit of getting better rates and,
putting
so
in
my rates are actually better overall than trying to use a fulfillment house. So if we pack things in-house, which we do, we pack, just Michelle and I pack everything in-house. It's cheaper for us to do that than to use a fulfillment house. So they're charging you to pack the boxes and do all
so
the
there's a
work.
convenience fee percentage that they're paying.
Yep.
They're built in too.
And they
Whatever
take the
whatever
benefit.
advantage they have with the shipping, it's burnt in the convenience side of it. Yeah.
They take that as part of their margin of how
Right.
they have to operate. So, and I get it. They have a lot of overhead. They have a lot of things to pay for. And in some ways, if you start shipping enough with them with certain things, it can become better, but it's not. And we might not ever be making enough wine that we couldn't figure out how to do some of these things, just to keep them all in house. So for us.
So I have one more just off the wall comment for you real quick. One of the things that we
Just give me
really
a
like,
minute. Sorry.
no problem. One of the things we really like with Caliza was they would send us the little 25 milliliter
Samples.
samplers. Because literally what we end up doing is we get a shipment in. You should see our dining room. There's a reason why we're here, not our dining room, because our dining room is full of wine right now. But what we love to do is put the samples out, put the wine bottles out, and sample them. And those little samples that Caliza did were awesome. And the fact is that we can take them, and when we like somebody and we're in part of their club, it was like, hey, give me the samples. Okay, I want 6 of that, 6 of that, 6 of that, none of that. That doesn't do it, that doesn't do it, and 5 of that. And we kind of work down the line. Just as an input is something that we actually find extremely powerful for us, because it allows us to purchase what we want, and we always purchase in 3, 6, or 12. So it kind of is a quick thing for us to go, yes, we want a lot of that. Like if whites and stuff like this, I mean, we'll pick a case of this rosé up. And it's just like, this is kind of where we want to go and what we enjoy drinking. Yeah.
So I was I developed that whole program at Caliza with the team. We did that only because of COVID, and we were trying to find ways to mainly connect with our members and followers. It turned into a much bigger thing than that. There are only a few brands that have really continued the project, and I think some are trying to rethink it and work with other companies to repackage it, but there's a lot that goes into that is not very easy for us to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were doing thousands of those, like we got to a point in COVID where like I wasn't making wine anymore. I was spending multiple days a week, if not entire weeks, like filling those bottles. Like our small team, we had to, because we were packing up 300-400 a week packs. Like that means 300-400 of each of those boxes to send out. And it's again, talking to making sure the wine stays fresh and all of these things to like,
Right.
it's really hard to do. That being said, probably something we could try and figure out. Right now for our model, for our brand is and I know it's not as easy when people don't live super local, but our experience is to meet in person with you and taste you through our wines, and really not only taste you through the wines, but tell you our story and tell you about the wines and like what we're doing and kind of our journey and what we're on here and what this project is kind of all about. Because it's, to me, it's more than just wine. And
actually, absolutely, Andy, because this is one of the things that we are always striving for is our mix. We have 14 wine clubs we're a member of now, and we're always trying to mix. It's like we're always concerned. It's like, oh, we have some huge multi-billion-dollar people we're members of, and it's like, I'm not excited about that, but the wine's okay. It fits part of our profile. But a lot of it is exactly what you say, is knowing who you are. This is why Scott over at Torrin, Carl at Caliza, and people like that. I mean, Stefan over at L'Aventure, and we haven't met him yet.
Small.
Yeah.
Not like he's small.
Not like he's small,
but Alex at Albert.
Alex at Albert, we love.
But,
I mean, that's the stories and everything else that are there, and that's actually what we really strive for.
But it's hard to get to you guys, to everybody, right?
Yeah.
And we don't live in town, and so
yeah. I mean, the group is kind of this whole thing here has been more about the smaller producers. Alex Bear's been a guest. Ryan Peace, Andy. We've had mostly Gary Eberly was just something that, he and I had talked, and he wanted to do it. And why not? Because he's an icon and he has a lot of good stories to tell. And it was great. But we want to help the ones that are like flying under the radar, so to speak, but not so much anymore, right, Andy? So
I'm trying to get the name out there.
yeah, no, we're helping you, and we're helping others.
Yeah.
So
That's how it should be.
all those places, L'Aventure, Torrin, belong to all those clubs, and I love their wines too. I mean, there's so many wines to love. So
right.
We're just, I think like Lara and Patrick, we like variety. So there's a lot of great Syrahs in Paso, in my opinion. So, but they're all uniquely different. In maybe not big, but Nicora, Torrin, Caliza, who else? I mean, there's plenty of them. That the Syrah is what kind of first, when I went to Paso in the early 2000s, it was Cab, all Cab, and Zin. Now it's Syrah is where my focus is. So.
The Rhone blends are in there. I mean, the Masson, the Rosson, Viognier.
No, there's some amazing amount of incredible wines I've never tasted before.
No, this is like what Andy was talking about. This is like having the variety of all these different wines that people don't know about. You've got the terroir. You want to go cool, you want to go hot, you want to go mid, you want to go what? And it's just like, this is, Andy, you're the next generation that's going to put the wow in this, and it's just going to.
I know Graciano had been blended before until Arnaud at Binôme gave me a barrel taste out of Graciano. I had no real clue what it tasted like 100%. And I was amazed by it. It's sweet, sweeter, obviously, but very good.
Well, thanks, guys.
We're gonna let you go.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take off. It's getting past bedtime.
We're blabbing.
We're really glad you were on. Really glad we got introduced to you and your wines.
And actually, I think
Andy,
we're gonna probably come down a little.
Andy,
We'll come on down early on. Yeah, we'll come to early in April and see you. I think this is
Lots of
definitely gonna be-
success, Andy.
Cool.
We wish you all the best. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, we look forward to seeing you guys. Thanks
We'll
for
be
having
up,
me. I
we'll
appreciate
all,
it.
Thank you,
we'll all
Andy.
be up there in April. Okay.
Okay, we'll see you then.
Yeah, all right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
So Mike, I got a question to ask you. What does his Syrah taste like?
What does it taste like?
I mean, is